A phrase that you'll hear me say often on this show is that menopause is not just a woman's health issue, it is a woman's life issue. And my guest today is a prime example of exactly what I mean. After experiencing what she thought was a panic attack, the actual diagnosis led my guest into a state that had her fearful of leaving her own home. You don't want to miss when Lynn Lawson shares her menopause story. I'm Tafika Kier, and welcome to the Mr. Menopause Show.
Thank you, Sophie, for having me. First of all, I really appreciate the opportunity to share my story. Like you said, my name is Lynn Lawson. Live in the Atlanta area. I am 53 years old. It's so funny because I never thought that I would be the woman to say it was shy about telling my age, but I'm at that point in my life. My menopause story actually started in 2021. And it started with actually me being in a conversation that was upsetting, and it triggered technically a SVT, which is a super ventricular tachycardia, which is basically an accelerated heart rate. So after being in that state for about 45 minutes, I ended up having my kids call the ambulance to come get me because I didn't know what was going on. Was in the, they gave me a shot of adenosine, which resets your heart. So it's like your heart stops for a second, which is really scary, and then it regulates it. But I was in the hospital just for a couple of hours. They observed me, and I specifically asked the doctor. I said, the emergency room doctor, I was like, can upsetting situations trigger this? And he said no. So I was like, okay, so I have this SVT thing. I don't know what this is, and it was very unsettling to me because it's like my heart. It's your heart. So it created heart anxiety for me. But now I realize that was the trigger. That was the starting point for my menopause, which was actually an anxiety attack. And it's so weird because you normally an anxiety attack, you think sweating and hyperventilating and all of that. This was none of that. It was just strictly an accelerated heart rate. And then I became very, very anxious overall. And then the hot flashes started probably a couple of months later. That in itself, the hot flashes coupled with the anxiety, coupled with the not knowing when my heart would speed up, made me develop agoraphobia. Okay. So I literally, from October of 2021 until April of 2022, I barely left. I didn't leave my house. I may have left the house maybe like a couple of times, and that maybe 3 times in those 6 months. But I would barely even leave my room. And so fortunately for me, my kids were older. My daughter came back, moved in to help me out. She was 28 at the time. And then my sons were 21 and 16-ish. And so they helped, like cooking, because I literally was afraid to leave my room. The hot flashes were weird too, because you would think they would be traditionally just like sweating a lot. And, so I've seen people have hot flashes in my family. This wasn't like that either. It was an aura of unsettled, like you're doomed kind of thing. And I would get warm, but I would never perspire, except for at night when I would have them at night, in my sleep. So my symptoms were not very traditional by any means. And the anxiety, which I never knew was tied to menopause, was a huge, huge deal for me. And it was helpful, but also hurt me at the same time that I wasn't in a traditional job setting. So in my case, I had clients at that time and I couldn't work. I couldn't work. I was so consumed by what was going on with me that I just literally, I couldn't do anything. I was just in the bed. I was afraid to take a shower. It was that bad. So that's kind of where it went. It lasted, and I'm still in menopause, obviously, or, past the stage of menopause. It's gotten better. I'm not agoraphobic anymore, but I still have, moments of heart anxiety and just an overall anxiety feel. But my other symptoms, like the hot flashes and things like that, have settled down. I still get them, but they're not like beating me over the head like they were.
Right. So a few questions. So with the agoraphobia, like you say, you like going to the shower, coming out of the room, was that because you were afraid you were going to go into one of those attacks, or was it just a fear out of nowhere?
I was afraid any missed heartbeat, because you're very, very sensitive to your heart rhythm, with heart anxiety. So if I felt that I would skip a beat or have double beats or anything like that, if I stood up too quickly and my heart rate went up a little bit, even a little bit, just normal behavior for your heart, it would freak me out. So me getting in the shower, the more activity you're doing, the more your heart rate's gonna do what it needs to, heart's gonna do what it needs to do. So it was a little bit of both. It was Yeah, it was just really, really weird, because I've been anxious for a while, because I've had a lot of, trauma in my, growing up, with my sisters passing away and my father passed away and stuff like that. But I never felt like I had an anxiety problem until menopause.
Yeah. Now, when it initially happened, you said you did not realize it was menopause, right?
I knew that my cycle had stopped though. My cycle was over probably, maybe that's the other thing, because it was over probably for a year and I didn't experience anything. So it just
Yeah.
came like, it was just like out of the blue. So crazy, so strange. Everything that you're taught, I didn't go that route. I went a different route.
Yeah, it's interesting. So long before I got into menopause, I worked in metabolic health and wellness, which is every other health issue: diabetes, high blood pressure, thyroid issues, all that. So anything that was related to health. And what I actually found throughout my transitioning into menopause is that a lot of the symptoms that women have are actually related to metabolic issues. And so for me, like hearing everything that you're saying weren't traditional like things. And I think I understand what you're saying is that because, like you said, most people think of hot flashes, night sweats, mood swings. That's what, menopause is. And I think because that's what the thought of what menopause is, people don't realize there's like more than 40 symptoms of menopause, which every one of the ones you just said are, and which I know, of course, because I'm in this field. But yes, and I think that's why so many women go so long without knowing that they have menopause. And just so you know, that's not rare, like that you didn't realize it. Actually, 77% of women that have menopause symptoms don't realize the symptoms are menopause, because just like you're thinking hot flashes. You're thinking, all these things that, maybe you saw your mom go through and all this. And so people don't realize even someone can go and become a diabetic because of menopause. Like, so it's because your estrogen affects every hormone in your body. So if you think about the fact that if one of your hormones is already weak, when estrogen is gone, it's no longer there to support that hormone. That hormone is just going to get weaker. And so that's why some women have certain symptoms and other women have different symptoms, because it all depends on where your body is out of balance before you get into that state of menopause, what's going to happen. Because estrogen, I always say to my female clients, think of estrogen as the girlfriend that you and all the girls go out with, but this is the girl that is like keeps everyone in their place. Everyone knows, she's like the mama of the group. What happens when she's not there? The girl who's wild get wilder. You know what I mean? So everything. So that's how I say think of estrogen like that. So once you get to that stage where it's gone or so low, then then the other hormones have to try to support the ones that are bad, and then all that does is make those other hormones weaker. So it just becomes a cycle, and that's why people get sicker and sicker. Yeah.
I did not know that at all.
Yeah, and this is again why I want to have these conversations and get this information out, because I think it's so important to know, especially with women of color. Is you're actually more prone to go into an early menopause, and you're more prone to the medical field putting you into a medically induced menopause because of the thyroids. Black women more prone to get hysterectomies, all those kind of things. Yeah, so those kick you into menopause once your ovaries are gone. Now, when you said that your kids were there helping you, now did they know it was menopause that was going on?
First, um, then I had to say, I think this is I think this is menopause. With the hot flashes, because I was trying to peel back the layers of I mean, I could have gone to the doctor and just they don't really test. They just say, hey, you're at that age. So they don't really test you for that. So I was just peeling back the layers of, okay, my cycle is gone. My mother's, she was 51 when she went through menopause. Hers was uneventful. So I was just peeling back the layers of what I thought it was.
Mhm.
And so I told them, I think this is menopause, and it's a hot flash. And so they were in, and they understood, and they were very supportive.
Oh, well, that's good because one of the issues that we found in all the research is that doctors aren't educated in menopause. So they don't really know, like even the OBGYNs, they go through their course study is so short that they even did a study of gynecologists and asked them, they said based on the amount of curriculum that they learned, they're not comfortable with doing menopause because they don't get enough education on it. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Even all these years after, like I said, my mom passed away in 94. She had menopause for like 10 years. And it's still the same. Like all my clients that come to me, they have these same issues. I'm like, my mom went through that. I'm like, why is it with the advances in everything in science? But you have to think about it. Women's health issues are always kind of pushed off to the side. So, but I always say, if you really think about menopause, even like yourself, it's more than a health issue. It's a life issue. It's emotional, physical, mental, psychological. So, and just by default, it's going to impact your family. It's going to impact your work. It's going to impact every aspect of your life. So that's beyond a health issue, which is, again, even more reason for us to talk about it more, because it's going to affect the workplace. It's going to affect family structure. More women get divorced during their menopause years than any other years. Yeah. Yeah.
I
So
can,
it's
I can see that though.
yeah, because if you think about it, you may not know why you're having these mood swings, and all he knows is he's getting the brunt of it. So he probably just thinks that you're tired of him and you don't even realize, like you don't even realize what's going on with you. You just feel this way, and he should just understand. You know what I mean? So yeah, so it makes a lot of sense. Again, why we have these conversations. Awesome. So you said that you work more with clients. So when you said, so it was like your personal clients, or did you work under a company that provided you with clients?
I was a marketing consultant, so I had my own personal clients. And it was just, I really couldn't perform much during that time. And so, but fortunately, the good thing that happened for me is that recruiters would reach out to me. And I'm a copywriter by trade. So a recruiter just reached out to me with an opportunity, and that was in January of 2022. I was bedbound for the most part at that time, but I still could be on the computer,
Mhm.
But he reached out to me, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'll send over my resume. And I did. Didn't hear back. In February, didn't hear back.
Mhm.
March, heard back. And it was like, they want to interview you. And I was like, huh? Because by that time, I wasn't even thinking anything about it. Long story short, that the interview worked out. I got the job. It was a contractor position for 6 months plus. So it wasn't like, it was a W-2 position, which was great. Steady paycheck every 2 weeks. Awesome. I had to go out and get a drug test, and I had not left home. So I had to go down the street, which is like, oh, it's literally like a mile away from my house at the time. And I was so freaked out about doing that, and plus the masks and everything else was,
Mhm.
COVID was still pretty, ramped up at that time. But I did, and that was my first time actually leaving my house by myself and getting out of the car, because I could drive down the street by that time, like just, drive the neighborhood and circle back and coming back into my house and in the garage. Still would be having like a little bit of anxiety with that, but I was still able to do that.
Yeah.
Now, so I went and actually had the drug test. So that was a huge, huge moment for me, because that made me understand that I was breaking the anxiety cycle in some way.
Yeah, nice. Now you're actually in a very different position because, like you said, you're kind of your own boss. So you couldn't even get work menopause in the workplace training or anything or policy because you're your own boss. So what were the things that you did for yourself that would have helped you to get any type of relief from your symptoms or anything?
So I'm very much a holistic type of person. And during this time, between me going to the cardiologist for my SVT and um, that 6 months, I lost about 30 some odd pounds because I literally was afraid to eat because I thought everything would affect my heart. But also at that time, so I ate a lot of, fruits and, I didn't eat a lot of meats anyway, mostly like, chicken, which is terrible, but fish and stuff like that was the main staple of my diet. But I also researched essential oils. I didn't want to do the hormone replacement. I just didn't feel comfortable. If one wants to do that, that's awesome. I just didn't want to do it. So I created a little a little roller ball with olive oil and lavender, clary sage, and frankincense. I just rubbed it on my stomach, like near my ovaries every day. Maybe it was a pseudo help. Maybe it was a placebo. I don't know, but that helped. I also increased my water intake, and that actually helped quite a bit. And surprisingly, with the hot flashes, it calmed them down tremendously. So that's one thing I can suggest is I try to drink a gallon of water a day. I hardly ever hit a gallon, if ever, but at least a half a gallon to a gallon I would get in per day, and that definitely slowed down the hot flashes. So that was basically it.
And I'm glad that you said you did holistic things. I'm not one that particularly likes for people to do their own research and find things like that because there's so much horrible info out there. But at least you went the holistic route and you didn't do these crazy concoctions and pills and things that I see people taking. And even some of these supplements, I know there's this one supplement that a lot of women take for their hot flashes. I can't think of the name of it right now, but a study just came out that is giving women liver disease. I'm like, so see, it's like, I'm so with you with the holistic. Actually, that's why women come to me for my coaching is because they come to me when they don't want to do the HRT because I do it from a space of we're looking at what symptoms you have. Even when I try to figure out, what the actual health issue is, has nothing to do with the blood test. It's all based on your symptoms. I'm like, your blood test can't tell you what your symptoms are. You have the symptoms, right? You know what I mean? You go to get the blood test after you know you have symptoms. It's not the other way around. So I look at the symptoms first, and most more times than not, if there is a certain number of symptoms that are associated with a specific area, and you have like more than like 4 or 5 of those in that area, then I say, let's focus on foods that heal that area, get rid of foods that don't, and then do types of physical activity that will give you the right kind of circulation and things like that. So I'm totally holistic as well. So I love that approach that you did that way. So kudos on you for not taking pills. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I didn't want to go that route.
So once you started doing that holistic approach, how long did it take before you started to see some type of results?
What was quick? The increase, and I don't do coffee. So I was very, very clear about alcohol. I didn't do alcohol. I really didn't do chocolate much at that time. I never had a cup of coffee in my life. So those things, and I don't do dairy. I do dairy a little bit now because before I had heard that dairy can trigger more hot flashes. I didn't do spicy foods either. But I would, every now and then I would incorporate a little bit, but with drinking the water, it was pretty immediate for me. It was within a week for sure. Like my little concoction of the frankincense, lavender, clary sage, I have no idea. I just felt better doing it. It was like a little bit of self-care, and I still do it. I mean, it's still, I feel like if I stop, then, I'm not sure. Yeah. But the water, I think, water is a big deal. It just is. So it helped a lot.
Yeah. And I can't even remember. I think it's like more than 60% of Americans are already dehydrated. They don't get enough water anyway. So in doing things on your own and figuring out how to try to manage your symptoms better, is there anything that you can think of that you would have done differently?
So I would have gone more the functional medicine route earlier. That is more my area of comfort. My level of comfort. I would probably have done that sooner, but I wasn't working at the time, and functional medicine doctors or integrative medicine doctors are really expensive because there's no insurance. So it's like $400 for your first visit. Yeah, I'm not working, and I can't really leave home either because I'm too afraid. So, but if I could have figured out a way to have that, earlier in the process, I think that would have been better off.
Gotcha. And would that be the advice that you would give other women struggling with menopause?
Yes. If a traditional doctor is not listening, first of all, I don't I'm really particular about stuff. So if they're not listening, find somebody else. Find somebody that you can relate to. I'm just really funny about that. But if they're still not listening, get a second opinion or find an alternative medicine person, somebody that's that you can get a referral to someone or find some reviews on somebody that's good. There are people that will actually work long distance virtually with, in these cases now. So yeah, just don't suffer in silence. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Don't sit there and suffer because it's a lot. I mean, your mental health is affected tremendously with menopause.
Yeah, oh, very much so. And especially, and just like I said, just the isolation in itself, the isolation that a lot of women feel just by going through it in general. And it's interesting because the stigmas that are still tied to it, especially within the workplace as well, is that, it's an old woman's disease, or I'm getting older. Even like you said at the beginning, you don't want to say your age, and what's interesting is all those sayings were things that were said so long ago that your age would have been considered old back then, but now think women live like 20, 30 years beyond menopause. You know what I mean? So that's far from being old. So say your age loud and proud. So.
Yeah, my mom is 91 and she's still kicking, sharp as, a tack. So she went through menopause 40 years ago. So yeah.
See, exactly. So there's so much after that. So it's definitely not an old woman's disease. I say, if anything, it's a midlife issue that has to be again just addressed in a more sound way. A few years ago, I actually had a stroke, and so in the midst of having the stroke, the thing that I had the biggest fear about was that moment when I realized that I had no control of my body. And so I can totally relate to how that feels. Like you just have no control of your body. I had that for a moment. I cannot imagine feeling that every day, multiple times a day. And like I said, some women experience this up to 10, 12 years of menopause with this kind of stuff. And it's like, how can we not talk more about it? So thank you for coming on and sharing your story. What do you think? Although you did not work, within a company, what are some things that you think that some companies can do to better support their, female employees who are experiencing menopause, who may not have experienced it to the severity that you did, but I mean, any level is going to disrupt their life. So, what advice would you give them?
It's very somatic. You feel a lot, and you can't always pinpoint why it works the way that it works. But I think companies need to realize that this is actually a thing. And it's not this up in here. We getting up in the morning and say, oh, I don't feel like going to work. It's not like that. Like literally you can be incapacitated for an entire day. I've stayed in my bed like days at a time, just like you said, being fearful of my body, like getting up and moving would it trigger something like, so it's literally, it's a thing. And so it should be treated like I don't want to say like an illness because I don't want to speak, negative terms on it, but it should be treated in that way. It shouldn't be like your PTO is taken. Like there should be actual some type of wellness days built in for women, other than just, your regular sick days. Self-care, I don't know what you want to call it, but something, should exist.
Do you think that it would be beneficial for companies to do kind of like a menopause awareness training so that the staff would better understand, so that, if they saw you having a hot flash or something, or even like some of the suggestions that we make when I do my training is that I allow a woman to be closer to the bathroom or by a window rather than, or be able to change the air if it's an office setting, or even if it's like a uniform, can we get thinner material? You know what I mean? Anything. I say any ways to help the employees to be able to do their job effectively. And then what's also coming out is that they're saying it can also be a safety issue, as well. Because think about, like you're saying, like you were having these panic attacks. People respond differently to different things. Someone else may get freaked out by that. Another person, you know what I mean? So having that awareness, I think, would be beneficial in the workplace.
It absolutely would because, fortunately, like I said, I was on, I was at home, but I remember specifically there was a time that it was like a group, a Zoom Zoom. I wasn't on camera, so that was good, but I had a panic attack during that meeting. I was like within my first month of being there. So I literally, my heart rate was like boom, 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 boom. And I had to like walk away from the computer and lay down and kind of just took like 20 minutes for me to calm myself down. So that's really important to have that training. And then also sometimes people pass out. Menopause can, people, you can literally faint.
Mhm.
So if people don't know what's going on with you, or just understand what the possibilities are, like, yeah, it is a safety issue for sure.
Yeah.
There needs to be training behind it, around it.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that I'm hoping that people get out of my book, I wrote a book called Making Menopause Work in the Workplace, is that, and the whole point of it is what employers and colleagues should know about menopause and how they can help. And I always look at it again in context of it being a life issue, not a health issue, because even when she leaves work, she's still got menopause. You know what I mean? So when she gets home, she's got her husband's got to see her with menopause. Her kids got to see her with menopause. So even I think having like the family being aware, doing like relationship and menopause coaching, all those things, or even making it something that's part of, just the culture. One of the studies that came out said that when there were open discussions about menopause in the workplace, that women's symptoms decreased. And it's like, and again, they think because if you think about it, if you're worried about something, 9 times out of 10 it happens, right? You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
So it gets triggered. So it makes so much sense. And a lot of these things are just simple. A training could be an hour webinar. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be elaborate. It's just about sharing information. So hopefully this episode of the show will help to spark some more conversations. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. Hopefully this will actually, give some more women some courage to come on and share their story, because I would love to share everyone's experience, because I think it's important for people to know that they're not alone and they're not experiencing this alone. And I think that putting this out here like this is a great way to do that. So yes, thank you, thank you, thank you.
I want to yell it from the rooftops because it shouldn't be a taboo topic. It just shouldn't be. We
Yeah.
all go through it if we live long enough as women.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I say. Every woman will experience it. Therefore, everyone in her life is going to experience it. I remember when I was younger, they didn't even call it menopause. They called it the change. It was like she's going through the change. Until here recently, I haven't heard people even say menopause. So at least it's starting to get spoken about more with, being on the Tamron Hall show, and Oprah and Maria Shriver just talked about it. So hopefully we'll get more conversations like that. So yes. Great.
I'm hoping for that too.
Yes, great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And so hopefully we'll have a follow-up story with you in the future after you've gone through the post-menopause phase and see where you are with things and see how you're feeling.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I really do.
In next week's episode, I'll be sharing a few proven lifestyle solutions for menopause, and I'll be giving you a little HRT 101. See you then.